When she first stepped into my house, she had the softest smile, the kind of smile that makes you feel silly for ever doubting someone. But that same smile would later haunt me, echoing in every room she once touched. I didn't know then that I was welcoming my husband's other wife into our home. My name is Lorraine, 54 years old, mother of 2 grown kids, and wife, or at least, I thought I was, to a man named Charles. We'd been married for 27 years. Not a perfect marriage, but one I believed had weathered its storms. Charles worked in construction management, often traveling for projects, short trips at first, then longer ones, the kind that turned weeks into months. I'd grown used to sleeping on his side of the bed, his scent fading from the pillow, telling myself this was what commitment looked like: patience, trust, and faith that love meant something stable. When he returned from a business trip to Nevada, he came back. Lighter, different. He hummed more, smiled more, checked his phone a little too often. I noticed, but I wanted to believe he was just happy to be home. After all, I was just grateful he'd made it back safe. It was over dinner one night when he mentioned her casually, like she was an old friend. "Her name's Tasha," he said between bites of roast chicken. "She's new to the company, got transferred from Las Vegas to our office here. Doesn't know many people. I told her you'd probably take to her. She's got your same spirit." He smiled when he said that. I didn't think much of it then. Tasha showed up the following week with a tray of cupcakes and a polite thank you card. She was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, with golden brown skin, shoulder-length curls, and a confidence that filled the room before she even spoke. She had that easy charm, the kind that made people lean in when she talked. I remember thinking, Lord, this woman could be on television. When she told me she was new in town, staying at a long-stay motel until she found a place, my heart tugged. Maybe it was my maternal instinct, or maybe it was loneliness from all those quiet nights Charles was away. 2 weeks later, when she called saying her lease fell through and she had nowhere to go, I didn't hesitate. "Of course, you can stay here," I told her. "We've got the guest room, just until you get settled," she cried, real tears. Or at least, I thought they were real. The first month was fine. We fell into a rhythm. I'd make breakfast, early oatmeal and tea, and she'd join me, still in her robe, chatting about her workday or how she missed Vegas sunshine. She was sweet, helpful, always offering to wash dishes or walk the dog. Sometimes, she and Charles would talk in the living room about work, their laughter trailing down the hall as I folded laundry. I remember smiling to myself, thinking how nice it was that my husband had such a good colleague. But then, little things began to change. Charles started working later. He'd come home past midnight, claiming paperwork and client dinners. When I asked if Tasha was still in the same department, he said she'd been moved to a new project, one that didn't involve him much anymore. Yet somehow, I'd see her phone lighting up with his name after dinner. She'd smile faintly and step outside, saying it was work stuff. And one morning, I found his tie, hanging neatly on the back of her bedroom chair. I stared at it, my throat tightening. When I asked her about it later, she laughed softly. "Oh, that? He left it in the office last week. I brought it back for him." Something inside me shifted that day. Not anger, not yet. Just unease, like I was standing on the edge of something I didn't want to see. About a month later, I caught them in a quiet moment. I'd gone out for groceries. Came home early because I'd forgotten my wallet. When I opened the front door, the house was quiet, too quiet. Then I heard it. A low whisper, a laugh, their voices. I followed the sound to the patio door, cracked just enough for me to see them. Charles was sitting close to her, too close. His hand rested on her knee. They weren't kissing, not yet, but the intimacy was unmistakable. That gentle, familiar tone he used to save for me. I froze. My whole body went cold. Then, as if sensing me, she turned her head slightly and smiled. Not guilty, not surprised. Just calm, like she'd been waiting for me to see. I didn't say a word. I just closed the door and walked upstairs, my heart pounding so loud I thought it would split open. Charles came up half an hour later, pretending nothing had happened. "Everything okay?" he asked. "I saw you," I said quietly. He looked away, sighed, and rubbed his forehead. "Lorraine, it's not what you think." I didn't answer. I just stared at him, waiting for a lie that wouldn't sound so much like the truth. For a week, we didn't speak. Tasha kept her distance too, moving silently around the house, like a shadow that refused to leave. I prayed for clarity, begged God to show me whether I was crazy, or just finally seeing things as they were. Then, one night, as I was cleaning out Charles' office drawers, I found it. A thin envelope marked Clark County Marriage Bureau. Inside, a certificate. Charles Miller and Natasha Green. Married April 12th, Las Vegas, Nevada. The same trip he'd come home from humming. The same trip he said was strictly business. I remember the sound I made. Something between a gasp and a cry. I sank to the floor, certificate trembling in my hands, my chest burning with disbelief. They weren't just having an affair. He had married her, and she had been living under my roof, in the home I built. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there on the cold hardwood floor with that certificate in my lap, reading the same line over and over, like maybe if I stared hard enough, the words would change. Charles Miller, Natasha Green married. The date was clear. The signature was his. By morning, my eyes were dry, but my heart felt hollow. When I came downstairs, Charles was sitting at the table drinking coffee, scrolling his phone like nothing had happened. His wedding ring, my wedding ring, was still on his finger. I placed the certificate in front of him. He froze. His thumb stopped mid-scroll. "Lorraine, where did you?" "Don't." I cut him off. My voice was calm, too calm. "Don't lie to me. Not today." He ran a hand over his face, sighed, and leaned back. It was stupid. We were drunk. Vegas, things got out of hand. It didn't mean anything. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized I didn't even recognize this man anymore. "You married her, Charles," I said quietly. "That's not a mistake. That's a choice." He didn't answer. Just stared at the table like maybe if he didn't look at me, he wouldn't have to face what he'd done. And in that silence, I felt something inside me close. Not shattered, just done. Tasha stayed hidden that morning, but later, when I was packing a few of her things into boxes, she walked into the room, calm as ever. "You found out, huh?" she said softly, leaning against the doorway. I froze mid-fold. "You knew I didn't know." She shrugged, her tone light. "I figured he'd tell you eventually. I mean, technically, I'm his wife now." Those words, technically, "I'm his wife now," hit like ice water down my spine. I turned to her. "You moved into my home. You ate at my table. You called me sister. I didn't mean to hurt you," she said, her voice soft, but her eyes weren't sorry. "He told me it was over between you two. He said you were staying together for the kids." I felt my lip tremble, but I straightened up. "My children are grown," and he was still sleeping in my bed. For the first time, her confidence flickered. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just looked at her, long enough for the silence to do what words couldn't. Then I said, "Get your things out by tonight." She opened her mouth like she might argue, but I turned and walked away. When my daughter, Simone, came by later that week, she could tell something was wrong. "Mom, you look tired," she said, setting down a bag of groceries. I wanted to tell her everything, but my pride kept my mouth shut. I'm fine, baby, I said. Just been cleaning a lot. But Simone was sharper than her father ever gave her credit for. She saw the missing boxes, the tension in my shoulders, and the silence between me and Charles. 2 days later, she came back unexpectedly and caught Tasha in the driveway, shoving suitcases into her car. Simone called me that night, her voice shaking. Mama, what's going on? Why was she living there? I sighed. Because I was too kind for my own good. The next month was chaos. Charles tried to fix things in the only way men like him know how, half-truths and empty promises. It's over with her, he'd say. We can work this out. You're my real wife. But every time I looked at him, I saw the certificate, the ink, the dates, the ring that suddenly meant nothing. I told him I wanted space, and he moved into a friend's place, or so he said. But then the letters started arriving. The first one came in a crisp white envelope from an attorney's office. It was addressed to Charles and Natasha Miller. Inside was a notice. She was filing for spousal property rights to our home. Our home. The one my name had been on since before she ever met him. My hands trembled as I read the line. Petitioner asserts legal marital status and equitable right to half of the marital estate. Half of everything I'd built, scrubbed, and sacrificed for. That night, I sat at the kitchen table again, the same table where I'd once hosted birthdays, late-night talks, and laughter. Now it was covered in documents and betrayal. When Charles came by the next morning, I threw the papers down in front of him. She's coming after the house, Charles. He looked genuinely stunned, for once. She can't do that. She doesn't have any right. She's your wife, I snapped. You made sure of that. He sank into a chair, rubbing his temples. I'll talk to her. I'll fix it. I laughed bitterly. You can't fix this. You gave her a piece of paper that says she owns a part of me. The legal process that followed was slow and humiliating. I had to sit across from her in a lawyer's office, the same woman I once lent my hair rollers to, who helped me bake peach cobbler on Sundays. She sat there in a cream blazer, smiling faintly as her lawyer spoke about fair division. My lawyer leaned toward me and whispered, "Don't worry, Mrs. Miller. You have more proof of ownership. She doesn't have a leg to stand on." But it wasn't about proof. It was about principle. Watching her speak so calmly about my home, my life, like it was a negotiation, not a theft, tore something deeper than money ever could. Weeks turned into months. The case dragged on. My son stopped calling his father. Simone told me to sell the house and start fresh. But I couldn't. Not yet. That home held too many memories of birthdays, anniversaries. Even the night Charles proposed to me under the oak tree in the backyard. I wasn't ready to let her take that too. One night, about 6 months after the first letter, I got a call from Tasha's lawyer. She wanted to settle privately. I met her at a small cafe on Main Street. She arrived late, wearing sunglasses and perfume that lingered long after she sat down. She didn't order anything, just smiled. "Look," she said, "I don't want to drag this out. I'm willing to drop my claim if you compensate me." I stared at her. "Compensate you? For what?" "For my time," she said simply. "For what he promised me." That was the moment I realized. She wasn't after Charles anymore. She was after power. I took a slow breath, folded my hands, and said quietly, "You can keep whatever promises he made you. But this house? This life? That's mine. And I'm not giving you a dime." She laughed, shaking her head. "You really think you can win?" "I already have," I said. "You're sitting here asking for money that doesn't exist. That means you've already lost." Her smile faded. She stood up, muttering something under her breath, and walked out. That was the last time I ever saw her. After that meeting at the cafe, things went quiet, almost too quiet. No letters. No calls. No sign of her or her lawyer. At first, I thought maybe she'd given up. Maybe she'd realized I wasn't going to be bullied out of my own home. But peace never lasts long when you've been betrayed. 3 weeks later, I got another knock on the door. This time, it wasn't a lawyer. It was a reporter. She introduced herself as Melanie Parks from the County Herald. Blonde, young, voice too cheerful for someone holding a notepad full of gossip. "Mrs. Miller, I'm writing a feature on small-town scandals and marriage fraud cases," she said. "Do you have a moment to comment?" I blinked. "Excuse me?" She smiled politely. "I just wanted to verify the story before publishing. That your husband, Charles Miller, was secretly married to another woman while still living with you." My stomach dropped. "Who told you that?" She flipped a page. "Your husband's second wife, Natasha Green." There it was again. That name that once sounded like friendship and now tasted like poison. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I just said, "Tell her if she wants attention, she can have it, but I won't be her stage." And then I shut the door, locked it, and slid down against it, shaking. Charles called me that night. He'd heard about the article before I even saw it. "Lorraine, she's trying to ruin me," he said. "She's telling everyone I scammed her, that I lied about being divorced." I almost laughed. "You did lie about being divorced, Charles," he groaned. "I thought it didn't matter. We were separated. We were married." I snapped. The silence that followed said everything I needed to hear. The article dropped the next morning. Headline: "Double Life. Local man's 2 marriages exposed." It had pictures, one of me at a charity dinner from years ago, and another of her standing beside Charles at some cheap Vegas chapel. The story twisted everything. It made her look like a victim, and me, like the bitter first wife clinging to a man who'd moved on. The comments were worse. How could she not know? Maybe she's just jealous. Sounds like a gold digger battle. I didn't read them all. I couldn't. But my kids did. Simone came over in tears. "Mama, you can't just let her say these things." "I'm not going to fight lies with more noise," I said softly. "Truth doesn't need a microphone." But she didn't understand. Maybe no one did. "See, there comes a point when you're so broken. Even anger feels like exhaustion." I wasn't trying to clear my name anymore. I was trying to reclaim my peace. Then one night, I found a letter slipped under my door. No return address. Just a single sentence written in neat handwriting. "If you want to know what he promised her, meet me behind the chapel at 9 p.m. I should have ignored it. Every rational part of me screamed, "Don't go." But curiosity, or maybe closure, dragged me out of that house and into the night. The chapel was empty, the parking lot half lit by a broken lamp. I waited 5 minutes, then 10. Then a car pulled up. It wasn't Tasha. It was her sister. She stepped out, holding a manila envelope. "I shouldn't be doing this," she said. "But you deserve to know." Inside the envelope were printed emails, dozens of them. Charles' name in the from line, Natasha's in the to. Promises, confessions, lies. "Once Lorraine's gone, we can make it official. She still thinks I'm trying to fix things. Just give it time. You'll have the house, I'll make sure of it." My hands went cold. My vision blurred. He hadn't just married her behind my back. He'd planned to replace me. The next morning, I didn't cry. I didn't even confront him. I called my lawyer, and I filed for divorce. When Charles got served, he stormed into the house like a hurricane. "You really want to do this?" he barked. "After everything we built?" I looked him dead in the eye. "You built this on lies. I'm just tearing down the rot." He tried to argue, to twist it back on me. "You left me. You went to your father. You weren't here." I raised my hand, cutting him off. "I left to take care of the only man who ever kept his vows." You don't get to use that against me." He froze. For once, he had no words. The divorce was ugly. He fought tooth and nail, not for me, but for what I represented. Stability, respectability, money. When the judgment came, the judge awarded me full ownership of the house. Natasha's claim was dismissed entirely. I thought that would feel like victory, but it didn't. It just felt quiet. A few months later, I was out in the garden when a car pulled up. It was her again, Natasha. She stepped out slowly, hands empty this time. No lawyer, no arrogance. Just a tired, hollow look in her eyes. "I came to say I'm sorry," she said. I stayed silent. "I thought he'd leave you. I thought he'd choose me, but he used us both." Her voice cracked, and for the first time, she didn't sound like an enemy. She sounded like a woman who'd finally seen the truth. I took a deep breath. "I don't hate you, Tasha, but I can't forgive you either." "Not yet," she nodded. "I get it." Then she walked away, her car disappearing down the road, and with it, the last trace of that old life. Now, a year later, the house feels different, lighter, peaceful. I still make coffee every morning at that same kitchen table, but now there's only one cup. Sometimes, I look at the oak tree out back, where he once proposed, and I think about how easily love can turn into something unrecognizable. But I also think about how strength isn't found in revenge. It's found in rebuilding what's left. Because in the end, I didn't lose my home. I didn't lose my dignity. I just lost a man who never deserved either. It took me months to get used to the silence. There were mornings when I'd still wake up expecting to hear his keys jingling on the counter, the sound of the coffee machine sputtering to life. For a long time, I missed the noise, even when that noise had been built on lies. But healing isn't about forgetting what hurt you. It's about remembering without letting it define you. One evening, while sorting through old boxes in the attic, I found a stack of photo albums Charles and I had made when the kids were small. Vacations, birthdays, lazy Sundays, smiles frozen in time. For a second, I almost closed the box. I didn't want to feel that ache again, but something told me to keep looking. Tucked inside one of the albums was a note, in his handwriting. It wasn't addressed to anyone. Just a few lines on a yellowing piece of paper. "If I ever lose this family, it'll be my fault. Not because I didn't love them, but because I didn't know how to." I don't know when he wrote it. Maybe years before all of this happened. Maybe long after I'd stopped recognizing the man I'd married. For the first time, I didn't feel anger. I just felt pity. Because even though he betrayed me, he'd also betrayed himself and the life he could have had if he'd only told the truth. Simone visited more often after that. She'd bring her little ones over, fill the house with laughter and sticky fingerprints on my walls. "Mama, you're smiling again," she said one afternoon while we were baking cookies. I laughed softly. "I guess I am. You ever think about dating again?" Her question caught me off guard. I thought about it. The idea of opening my heart again after everything. I shook my head, smiling faintly. "Maybe one day, but not yet. Right now, I'm just learning to love my own company." She smiled back. "You deserve that peace." A few weeks later, I got an unexpected letter in the mail. It was from Charles. He'd written from a halfway house in Nevada. Apparently, he'd been arrested for tax evasion. I hesitated before opening it, but curiosity won. "Lorraine, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed to say this. You were right about everything. I ruined the best thing that ever happened to me. I don't expect forgiveness. But if there's any part of you that remembers the man I used to be, I hope you'll wish me peace. The same way you found yours." I didn't reply. I just folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope, and tucked it away in a drawer. Sometimes closure doesn't come from confrontation. Sometimes it comes from choosing silence and moving on. Spring came early that year. The cherry blossoms in the front yard bloomed brighter than they ever had before. The air felt soft, kind, like life was giving me permission to start again. So I did something small, but symbolic. I painted the front door, a deep, calm shade of blue, the color of freedom. And when I stepped back to look at it, I realized the house didn't feel like ours anymore. It felt like mine. Every wall I'd once cleaned, every room I'd once cried in, they were no longer reminders of betrayal. They were proof that I'd survived it. One evening, as the sun dipped low, I sat out on the porch with a cup of tea. Simone's children were chasing fireflies in the yard. Their laughter echoed in the warm air, and for a fleeting moment, I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who trusted too easily, who believed love could fix anything. I wanted to tell her that it's okay to be wrong, that sometimes strength isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet, steady, found in the way you keep showing up for your own life, even when everything has fallen apart. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: people will hurt you. They'll lie, they'll disappoint, they'll walk into your life wearing the face of a friend and leave it wearing the mask of a stranger. But no one, not a husband, not a betrayal, not even heartbreak, can take away your worth. Because dignity isn't something you fight for, it's something you choose to keep. That night, I wrote in my journal, something I hadn't done in years. I welcomed her into my home, and she tried to take everything I had. But she forgot one thing: a home isn't made of walls, it's made of peace. And that's something only I can build. I closed the book and blew out the candle. For the first time in a long time, the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt full, like the sound of a life finally writing itself. And so now, whenever someone asks me how I managed to forgive, I tell them this: forgiveness isn't about letting them off the hook. It's about cutting the line that keeps you tied to their mistakes. And in that release, you find freedom. When I sit on that same porch now, watching the world go quiet around sunset, I often think back to that season of my life. The lies, the heartbreak, the woman I was before I learned that sometimes love is not enough to make someone stay honest. And you know what? I don't regret opening my door to her, because how could I have learned who I really was, without seeing what I could survive? I used to think strength looked like holding everything together, even when it was breaking me apart. Now I know true strength is letting go of what was never meant for you. She took my trust. He took my home. But neither of them could take me. The woman who built that house from love, she built herself back from ashes too. And that's what I want to tell anyone listening tonight. Anyone who's ever been blindsided by betrayal, left wondering how to breathe through the pain. You will. You'll breathe again. You'll laugh again. You'll find peace again. Not because they said sorry, but because you decided you deserved better. When people ask if I ever forgave them, I smile and say this: forgiveness isn't something you give to the ones who hurt you. It's the gift you give yourself, so their poison doesn't stay in your veins forever. And when I look at my reflection now, calm, steady, older but softer, I realize that everything I lost only made room for everything I was meant to become. So, tell me this, dear listener: if someone betrayed you in your own home, would you choose revenge or peace? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story found you at the right time, make sure you subscribe, because every week we share stories that remind us pain may break us for a while, but it never gets the final say.